Hey everyone, thanks for coming. I really appreciate you guys coming out. For everybody online, joining us across the nation, I want to give you guys an introspective look into what it takes to perform at the highest levels. Now, the highest levels might not be at the big league level where I spent most of my time, but it could be at your travel baseball organization or JV or varsity, right? The game's going to end for you at some point in your career, but you have to figure out when that will occur, right? Now, granted, there's things that are going to happen within your career or your time on the field that will be out of your control, but as Derek Jeter said it best, control the controllables, right? Another guy that said something tremendous is Kobe Bryant, right? Kobe said something that is just profound when it comes to being an athlete, being a great employee, being a great father, husband, wife, whatever it might be, badminton player, checkers, whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish at that time, at that moment in time, or for yourself. He said it best, just show up, right? 70% of the game is just showing up. And I'm going to today, for y'all that just showed up, I'm going to break the game down into its most organic form to give you a good understanding of this big game we call baseball that has gone from the days of Joe DiMaggio and Babe Ruth to now all the analytics, the 8-figure salaries and 50, 60,000 fans a year or a game in the stands, right? I want you to ask yourself one thing. With all the tremendous technology that we have in the game, with all the new equipment advances, with all the player developers and the facilities and the grandeur of the game, has it truly changed? Has the game truly changed? I'm going to break it down and tell you that it actually hasn't changed in this form, which is the foundation or the cornerstone of baseball, right? Still 3 outs, still 3 strikes, still 4 balls, 9 innings. Guy who wins or the team that wins is the one that scores the most guys across the plate. That is essentially what we're trying to accomplish, whether we're trying to stay inside the pitch, whether we're trying to quantify launch angle, exit velos, increase strength, go and train with different instructors or whomever it is across the nation. We're trying to figure out how to push more runs across the plate or keep them from advancing to the plate, right? But let's look at the game in one working model that everything, whether you're a guy who has played at the highest level, whether you're a consultant or a player developer who maybe hasn't but is more book smart or clinician smart, it really doesn't matter. This applies to every single type of hitting philosophy, pitching philosophy, game philosophy, okay? The entire game revolves around this number, this 4.3 second number. If we can figure out how to either elongate this so that this guy here who just hit the ball has to run 100 feet, so to speak, and turn this into like 4.6 based upon my increased velocity on my throw, more range, quicker pitches, whatever it might be, then I'm going to have a better ability to keep runners off base. Vice versa. If I'm a GM, I'm trying to recruit or sign guys that aren't this 4-3, so to speak. I want a 4-1 guy. If I had an entire lineup of 4-1 or even sub-4, I don't know if that exists, I have a better chance because these base paths turn into 80 potentially, right? So if you think about today's game, it's power, speed, velocity, right? So I'm going to go around all this, and I'm left-handed here, so I'm going to go around on this side. It's easier for me on this, okay? So we're going to start with catchers. The average big league catching pop time is 1.85 seconds, okay? At 1.85 seconds, if my average pitcher gets set and releases at 1.2 seconds, that turnaround time is basically 3. That's why the average guy who steals is 3.4 seconds, 70% success rate based upon the ball being thrown high or low, okay? Now, let's take a look and see if this guy is 195 and 1-2 this guy is safe almost 100% of the time. If this guy is 1-1 and this guy is 1.68, which is the quickest recorded time ever by Jan Gomes, this guy probably has to turn around and run back, right? So these guys work in unison with their analytics. We can expand it for you, right? Okay, let's look at how the game evolves and works around this number, the 4.3 second run down first base, okay? At the big league level, the average ball is hit between 76 to 84 miles an hour. Now that's a big spread. The reason why is because you have bigger bats or heavier bats. You might have the ball hit off the end. A higher velo will get a higher batted ball exit velocity. But bottom line is, this is what they've come up with. It takes 1.3 seconds to reach any infielder on average. Now, obviously, you got your middle guys who play deeper and your corner guys who play closer, right? But 1.3 seconds, okay? Boom. Now, say we hit it to the shortstop. The average that this shortstop covers at the big league level is 23 feet in each range. Now, if you look at how long it takes and how much he covers, based upon his infield pop time, which is 2.5 seconds, throwing 85 miles an hour across the diamond, you'll see that's why a routine play is first base is getting the ball, he goes boom, and the guy almost steps, right? Because the turnaround time is 1.3 plus 2.5 is basically 3.8 to 4, and it's a boom boom, right? It's not to where when we go into Little League or Babe Ruth or high school, where routine, they catch the ball, and then they're like 2 seconds later or 2 steps later, the guy comes, right? As you go up in level, everybody, you have to understand that the game squeezes out the guy or the player who cannot compete on this board. It's not you can't compete on the mechanical board, it's you can't compete on this board. This ultimately is what will determine whether you go or you don't. Whether you get to Division III, Division II, Division I, whether you get some money to go to those levels, whether you finish out A-ball, rookie ball, AA, AAA, or the big leagues, right? Let's look at outfielders. Why do outfielders have to have bigger arms? They throw 91 miles an hour compared to 85, and they cover more distance because we've got bigger spreads to cover, right? Let's look at pitchers, okay? This is a great example of how player development today is in kind of a strife, right? You've got player developers who potentially haven't played at the top levels of the game, or they haven't educated themselves enough to play at the top levels of the game or teach at the top levels. Then you got guys who have actually performed at that level who may not be able to communicate to the average person what they did to make them great. And then lastly, you've got guys like you have in this room where we've either played at the top level or trained at the top level, but we have a great education process behind us, okay? Why do big league pitchers throw 90 plus? Well, it's simple. If the average major league batted ball is 76 to 84 miles an hour, okay, you'll have to have a certain hand speed in order to create that exit velo, okay? Well, that hand speed is somewhere around that 83 to 85 mile an hour, okay? But if I have a fastball that is below that, what happens is everybody sits off speed and looks fastball. When they see it, they adjust to the fastball meeting, right? So I'm just going to look for your off speed, your 5 different pitches, because you cannot get me out on the biggest portion of your of the plate that is owned by the pitcher, which is all great pitchers try to keep the ball. They try to bring the ball closer to you hitters, and all you hitters try to keep the ball away from you. That's the chess match, right? And I'm going to go into how we do that later on, but right now I just want to talk to you about this. 90.8. It overmatches hand speed of the level, so that therefore as a pitcher, I can own the inside portion of the plate and therefore open up the outside. But if I can't master the inside part of the plate and own it, then as a hitter, you don't have fear, and then you sit off speed, and then when I throw the fastball, it matches up, and there the ball goes. I'm a I'm a big proponent of, because of my physiology and having played at the highest levels of the game for a long time, I'm not a guy that just had a cup of coffee. So if you guys are just joining us online or you're going to watch this afterwards, it doesn't mean that I know everything in the game, because that's far from the truth. But what it does mean is that I had a competitive or intellectual advantage than to the guy who was like 6'5" or whatever, because ultimately speaking, I had to learn movement. I had to be efficient with my movement in order to compete, because I'm never going to be able to compete with the big-bodied guy who's 6'3", 6'4", slanted forehead, drags his knuckles. It's just impossible. I don't have the physiology to do that, but I do have the brain power to do that, right? And so that's how I do train. When I go into the big league clubhouse these days, right, the game has changed, and I'm going to explain how it's changed, right? When I go into Division I, now college baseball has a lot of resources that were unheard of back in the day. And the reason why is because the game has gotten way smarter. It has gotten faster, quicker, stronger, but in my opinion, it's created a smarter athlete at an earlier age because of all the resources and all the great things that everyone's doing, right? But at the end of the day, this is where you have to compete, right? So when I go at that big league level and I go into spring training and I'm in one of those meetings, I mean, we talk about it all the time with Dynakinetics and 4D over here who work at that level. You've got the analytics department, we call you the nerd department, right? Even though you're not nerds, but there's only one thing that we can say about it at that time. Then you've got the player developers, we're like the competitors. And we're like, hey, all you're doing with this technology is trying to call us out. And all you guys are over here doing is you guys ain't smart, you're a bunch of dumb jocks. And it's like this, nonstop. The other thing that I always hear is like, hey, we got all this information, but we don't know what the hell does it mean. What the hell does all of this information mean, right? I'm going to put it in a nutshell today, and I'm going to tell you exactly what it means. I'm going to break everything down and just go right to the root of the problem, okay? So I'm a big common sense guy. I'm a big common sense trainer. I think analytics, science, technology, just put it right down here for a second, has a big, big part in the game. But I also believe that at the end of the day, the competitiveness of the game and it is required. And I also think the athlete is being taken out of athletics because we're too mechanical and we're too technologically advanced. We're starting to go more towards this and less towards this, right? One of the things that I really want to start to stress here for y'all, when we talk about the actual organics of the game, what is somebody trying to do in any athletics, right? Whether I'm a hitter, pitcher, fielder, playing volleyball, football, I'm trying to move energy. That's basically it. That's all I'm trying to do. The athlete who moves the energy, creates energy, the most energy, contains it for the longest, staying loaded, and then uses it at the right time is inherently going to be the best one. Now, there's going to be people online and maybe in our audience here who are going to say, well, no, that's untrue, because it's a 6'5" dude. Well, then how did a guy like me or Pedro Martinez become pretty good, right? How were we able to compete in a game of giants, right? I also look at young kids, right, who are maybe physiologically not as advanced as older guys. You see it on the Little League World Series all the time. You see they dogpile and the 12-year-olds are this big. Was that kid really that good? I think what he's doing is just competing with, hey, I'm just going to show up, right? Because I'm just bigger, stronger, and faster than you. Inherently, as time goes on, that kid will get caught up by everybody else. And if he didn't create an education process and understand this essential thing of how to create, support, and use energy at the right time, he's going to be left behind, because at some point he's going to come across a guy like myself who has figured it out. And once I come into my man strength and my work ethic, I'm going to overmatch him completely day in and day out, right? So the first thing is, let's just talk about energy. Now, I know for some of y'all in the audience, and maybe a few of y'all online, this is probably boring or whatever, but it is something that we have to talk about. Now, I'm walking here, okay? Energy is all about counterbalanced movement, what we call dynamic balance. The more dynamically balanced you are, the better you're going to be able to move energy. I'm going to break that down into its basics, right? So I'm walking here. Here's my counterbalances, right? My arms are moving. These are counterbalances. My hands are moving. I'm kind of swaying left and right. I'm exaggerating a little. But in all of this, this is creating movement in motion or balance in motion, which is called dynamic balance. In athletics, please understand, there is nothing called a balance point. There is a center of balance, but there is no one balance point because we're constantly moving in athletics, and we have to constantly reposition and recalibrate and re-counterbalance, okay? Now look at it this way. I'm walking here, okay? Now my dad's Italian, my mom is Japanese, Vietnamese, Asian. And us Italians are short, stocky people. We usually have bow legs, right? So we walk more hunched, and that's kind of how I'm walking, with the shoulders forward a little. This is more balanced, all right? Now, if I was maybe to be an older guy that has a walker, right? You see a lot of old guys, they have to counterbalance like this, and they walk with the hips forward because they don't have as much muscle response, right? When you look at maybe a more heavier set guy, someone who's been eating a lot of the burgers and stuff, has got some little extra weight right here. He's going to have to counterbalance that, right? And you see them, they don't walk like this because they're going to fall over. When you talk about counterbalancing on plane, us pitchers work on plane. So we have to work more backwards on plane, right? Hitters is a little flat, so it's a little different. But energy, how do you move that? You're counterbalancing it. How do you become better at counterbalancing? Okay. Now, if I put this into just straight terms for you when it comes to baseball, I'm going to show you a few things here that work with counterbalancing because I don't want to get too crazy on things. Right? Come on up and just feed me. Coach Taunt here is going to feed me. We're going back in. All right. Everybody always says you pitchers can't teach hitting, and I just laugh at you. I just absolutely laugh. I laughed all the way to the bank. You know why? Because it was my job to know hitting. That's how I stayed in the big leagues, is to know my enemy. I know hitting just as good, and in my opinion, better than a lot of hitters do because you were in the fight. But I'm able to diagnose it and to figure out what the tendencies are and be able to identify before I throw the next pitch where I have to go with the next one. Otherwise, I don't have a job, right? So I'm going to start off here with the balancing or counterbalancing of hitting, okay? There's 4 phases to hitting. Now, whether you're a rotational, linear rotation, or whatever, there's 4 phases to hitting. There's your load out, right, which would be your stance and how you create energy, okay? There's going to be your separation or spread, which will be this right here, okay, as you've heard, the separation spread. Then there's going to be foot implantation, okay? And then the last portion, obviously, is swinging. But what I like to call that is your sequencing. If your sequencing is off, it's going to be obviously a bad swing. Sequencing, and I'll explain that in a second, all right? So on our load, okay, remember, you're creating a center of balance, not a balance point. So some people are big, some people are small, whatever. But do you see big league hitters hitting like this? No, they don't. The reason why is we want to stay above the ball, right? We want to stay above it right here. So they stay pretty balanced in what they're doing, okay? Some guys will be a little bent over, some guys a little more, but as they always say, hit through your heels, because where's the most balance? It's through your heels, not your toes, right? The second portion of what I'm trying to create in this is giving myself a great starting position that maximizes what all hitters get into at the very end, which is point of contact. If you look at Ted Williams to Bryce Harper, if you look at Ichiro, who was Asian and a Latin player of today's game. You look at Juan Marshall way back in the day. For some reason, it doesn't matter whether it is nationality, whether it is body size, whether it is that the fastball is 94 compared to 84, whether your training and your nutrition is different. Everybody, for some reason, gets into the same stance. And more importantly, if you look and go into softball, I do a lot of softball training. It's a female who supposedly is a lot different than us, a lot smarter than us males, but different than us. They hit identical in their movements. At point of contact, they are identical. Why is that? Because energy flows identically, all right? So I got to get into a great position to be able to get into this position right here. How do I do that? It's simple. I counterbalance. So from here, I'm going to create energy. However you want to do that, that's fine, okay? Now I need to support it, which is our separation, boom, or our spread, as you've heard, one or the other. Now, big league hitters do not separate like this. Their arms are not bent, okay? They don't bend because what is the opposite reaction to that? It'll be a movement plane that is this way, compared to if I have a movement plane that is longer with spread or separation, then it gives me the ability to have more distance to cover, as well as it keeps me inside the ball because energy is moving forward and through. And then at the end, I can come around because I have a bigger movement plane to work with, right? Now I'm going to get into the second portion of counterbalancing and what we're trying to create as hitters. It's called balanced force. Now you got to take a look at, I don't deal in scientific theory, I deal in scientific theorem. So I'm taking Newton's laws of motion, okay? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. That is unrefutable. It's undeniable across any sport or any type of movement, okay? So if we think about that, if I have an action, what's the reaction? Linear move. That would be the opposite move, right? Because the hand is going back, because this could be whatever, but the hand is going back, linear move to create balanced force. Any of y'all that don't know what balanced force is, it's okay. Think of tug of war. I'm pull, 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 pull. At the right moment, I'm going to release, or I'm going to get beat, and then the other group explodes forward. We have to have that in baseball because baseball is a very explosive sport. If you look at hitters, they have a 4-foot window, basically, they quantified, to excel and decel a 33-ounce club up to 84 miles an hour on average. They have to do that. Us pitchers, I have to accelerate my arm from a 4-foot plane. Once I start here, it's about 4 feet, to excel, decel quicker than the blink of an eye in order to throw the ball only 90 miles an hour. Now, I can't do that just by going after it. I have to figure out how to create elastic energy, how to create that tug of war balanced force, right? So when we get into here on the equal and opposite reactions, it'll be action, reaction, okay? Action, reaction. Here's the other portion of this. When you're talking about balanced force, think of tug of war. If you have 5 guys that have the same strength, 5 guys have the same strength, you put a 6th one here, it's just disproportionate, and then we blow out, right? Same thing here. If I have a disproportionate move back compared to my front move, what is the opposite reaction? Well, let's look at how energy moves. Energy has to dissipate. This is scientific theorem, right? Energy has to dissipate. It just doesn't disappear. So how does it dissipate? Well, if we look throughout all the years of baseball and athletics, and we look at us as player developers, what are all the mechanical issues? They're all the same, whether the athlete is different, right? What's the one for hitting? It's this, right? Am I right, Brent? This is one we see all the time. What's the one we always see right here? We're blowing open. We get too rotational, we fly open. Well, what that is a disproportionate energy load compared to a flow that overloads, and then energy has to move in an opposite plane in order to dissipate. So energy can't just go straight forward. It'll go straight forward for a little bit, but then it dissipates into the ground. Energy will go forward, and then it dissipates because my body's trying to slow it down in an opposite rotational pattern, which is a decelerative pattern, which is what we don't want, okay? So again, I'm going back to the 2 basics here. Let's make sure we're in a good position. Equal and opposite. Action, reaction. Be proportionate. That's why you see big league hitters with big hand moves. And you see big league hitters with big hip moves. Linear move. Now from this position, what do I got to do? I'm in a great position to hit. It's going to be really hard for me to cast my hands. It's going to be really easy for me to keep inside and create that launch angle is all you hear, right? Boom. This is an action. What would be the reaction? Boom. Okay? If I got this way, this is the action. What's the reaction? This way, pulling it off, right? So you don't want to get obviously into this plane. We want to get into this plane right here to when then we can get the opposite reaction, okay? Now the whole thing that's finalized on this sequencing, right, is your front foot. You always hear great hitters, hitting coaches talking about it. They're yelling it from the dugout. Get your front foot down, get your front foot down, get your front foot down. I'm sure you guys have heard it online or here, okay? But they haven't told you what part of the foot to get down, right? There's 3 ways to implant the foot. When we were all cavemen and we didn't have shoes or sandals, we would walk toe first, toe heel, toe heel, toe heel, okay? But when the shoe and the sandal came along, we started going heel toe, okay? And then the last portion to implant your foot is to get flat on it and then go with heel. You can't get onto your toe unless you have a good heel plant, right? Because one, physiologically, your ankle muscles are not strong enough to create enough force to be able to move and support the energy flow forward, as well as, right, your heel is really dense and powerful. That's how we're physiologically built. So when we get into how we get our front foot down and sequence properly, we could be a toe tapper, but we have to at some point get our heel into the ground before we rotate. Now, Mike Linsky earlier today said a great thing. The ASMI has identified, which we've known for years, decades now, that great athletes, high-end athletes, don't co-mingle different movement planes, right? They are linear to rotational, not linear and rotational. So for all y'all that's not understanding that, this would be linear to rotation compared to linear to rotation. You can identify the different movement plane and how crisp it is because that athlete has learned that sequencing and getting that front foot down, a part of that sequencing, what does that do? That takes energy, which is forward, and reflects it into where we need it to go, which is the barrel of the bat, right? When we talk about pitching, very identical. Pitching and hitting movements are almost identical on the lower half. You guys are just using a club, 33-ounce club, and I'm trying to throw a 5-ounce baseball, right? If you look at the equal and opposites, I'm sure you're all familiar with internal rotation. Well, what would be the opposite? External rotation. What would be another one, right? What would be the next action? Would be elbow extension, which is the elbow in front of the shoulder. And then how do you decel, or the opposite of that would be internal pronation. If we look at how we're moving down slope, you're going down a slope. Well, that means that you have to have the opposite reaction, and pitchers have to stay over their backside even further than a hitter. If you took a hitter and he hit like this, no good because he's on flat. But a pitcher coming down like this, you're going to be pretty good. Be pretty good as you stay over that back hip, not so much over the middle, right? So I highly urge everybody to take a look at this aspect, right? What are all of the analytics of the game? And how do I create those or eventually create those? It's simple. Move energy better, move it quicker, support it longer, or stay loaded longer, and create counterbalance or balanced force, right? I'm going to kind of go into some stuff that you could sink your teeth in, right? Because I come from an athlete standpoint. And one of the things I learned as an athlete is, yeah, hey, you've told me all this stuff, I've seen all this stuff. How the hell do I get better, right? I mean, that's what I'm sure a lot of you young guys are talking about, like, okay, this is great, but how the hell do I get better, right? Parents have probably been spending a lot of money and a lot of time, and your little Johnny's still batting below his body weight, right? Still making 25 errors in one play, yeah, right? So how do we get better? That's the player development side that we're going to mesh together with the analytics side to kind of show you these things, okay? Before we get into that, one quick thing, all right? Well, actually, why don't you guys come and bring your stuff, and I'll get suited up here. We're going to show you guys some powerful stuff here. Now, if you ever get to the big league level or a college program that really drives into stuff, you're at some point going to get quantified because this is your player worth. So don't think like this is above you. Don't think like you can avoid this. At some point, somebody is going to put a gun on you, meaning a radar gun or a stopwatch, or get some kind of quantification so they can figure out your worth, right? Now here in the Northwest, baseball is not where it is like in the South or in Texas or the Carolinas, that kind of stuff, because I think one, obviously weather, but two, we just don't have the resources up here that those big powerhouse baseball hubs have, right? You want me to stand? I got to stand at attention here so you can calibrate this one out, right? Yeah. Okay. This is saying with 4D motion. They're huge in Major League Baseball and golf. It's a movement enhancement analyzation system that he has that's being utilized all across the sport. It basically talks to you about sequencing, because anybody that starts more in their upper half rather than the lower half is going to have some major issues and won't be able to compete at the highest levels. This is Kyle from Diamond Kinetics. They've been around for a while. They're at the cutting edge and the forefront of Major League Baseball with technology and that kind of stuff. So both of them together are going to kind of quantify some things, and I'm going to show you how counterbalancing and that is changing the technology analytics feed-outs that we get, right? I'm just going to deal with hitting here because we've had too many pitching guys, all right? So one of the things with the hitting, can I talk while I'm doing this? Hey, I can talk. Yes. Great hitters have average swings. Great hitters, okay, have great plate coverage, okay? And so I'm going to talk to you about how to create the end result, which is plate coverage here, through equal and opposite reactions, and how they do it at the big league level. Good? Okay, cool. When I pitched, and I knew when I had 50,000+ in the stands and 6 cameras on me, and I knew my next contract or my next start was going to be dependent upon this one pitch, not thinking about all the little Mortimer, yeah, keep it here, whatever, right? All the mechanics that we are training these days. What am I thinking about? I'm thinking about the end result on how to actually hit that spot with power, right? And I know that, and I've learned that throughout all the years, that it is based upon movement. All the mechanics that you guys see or heard about or are training right now are all byproducts of movement and how energy flows through your body. So I'm going to give you a stat. At the big level, hey, we'll just use your guys' level. Where do pitchers start you mainly? Outside, correct? How many in the audience feel it's outside most of the time? Where they start you, okay? If you're behind, if you're ahead in the count, you're at a hitter's count. Where's the pitcher going, inside or outside? Most of the time outside. Big league level, it's over 70% of the time. But yet, this doesn't make sense. Why are most of those balls, over 70% of them, being pulled? So think about that again. If 70% of the time, or a little less, a little more, the pitcher at a hitter's count where I'm looking fastball and he knows that a fastball is coming, we're starting it outside, we're staying away from you, but yet 70% of the time, that hitter is pulling that baseball. Doesn't that go completely opposite of what most people are teaching these days? What do they teach? Hit the ball the other way. Hit it where it's pitched. Correct? Am I right? Now, I'm not saying that's inaccurate, but what I'm saying is you become no threat to me as a pitcher if you don't have the plate coverage to be able to at least take this ball on the pull side of second base, because that's obviously your power. If you're constantly flipping, we're just going to keep moving guys around. Now, this doesn't apply to the guy who has slanted forehead and drags his knuckles, okay? It doesn't apply to that guy. For the rest of us, it does, all right? But I'm going to show you here, okay? So I'm going to go through some stuff right here. Here, grab me another ball. I'm going to put my foot at the same spot every time. That way our virtual lab here is accurate. And I'm just going to start swinging. Can I swing now?
If you want me to capture, you have to.
Okay.
Let me loosen up first.
Yeah, let me loosen up. Go ahead, bring your. I'm pretty warm. So they're going to capture a few swings here. We're going to get exit velo, my launch angle, all that stuff, and I'm going to show you how to manipulate it. Good?
So when you hear the beat, you got 4 seconds to swing.
Okay. Okay. I mean, this isn't rocket science, but we'll look at it. Where am I at on average?
Let's see. Barrel speed around 54 was the low, 59 was the high.
54, 56, 59. All right. My angle so through the ball?
Approach angles, yeah, pretty consistent, right around -3, -4.
-3, -4, not good, right? Approach angle is not good. Barrel speed, not going to get me in the big leagues or even college, okay? How was my sequencing? Too much decel? Okay. So what does that mean? That means I'm underpowered, even though I feel like I have more, which is a lot of people that are probably online. And maybe somebody's going to give you a bunch of, tips and mechanics and whatever, but all they're doing is masking it. The reason why I'm not doing what I'm capable of doing is because I'm not counterbalanced. I'm going to explain it, okay? First thing is this. I didn't really have a hand move. I was just here. But watch what happens if I have a big separation and hand move, which is counterbalanced, okay? One more. Again, big. What's barrel speed?
59.61.
59.61. That's from a complete dead stop. Counterbalance, right? Action, reaction. Okay? What was that one?
57.
57. Now if I put it all together, big spread.
61.
61. Okay? And if you notice, the bigger my spread, the more fly ball I get, because my angle of attack, or my launch angle, is a lot better, right? I'm not trying to hit the bottom of the ball, it's just the way that the barrel cuts it.
Positive 18.
Positive 18, okay? Now if I went back to the other swing, and I didn't counterbalance, and it's a short hand move,
-7.
-7. What's the hand speed?
Barrel speed was 59.
59. That's right.
19.
Same thing. Okay? Here's the next one. How was the sequence?
The sequence was off. Transition was 57 off.
Right? So what he's saying is my transition is good, but everything else after that is starting too soon and it's off, right? But when I have more counterbalancing, I'm able to support the energy load all the way through, okay? Here's the next one. One of the things that I'm doing is I'm toe tapping. So if you look from the backside, what I'm doing incorrectly, you can toe tap, but I'm rotating to get my front heel down, right? I'm not getting my front foot into the ground. I can toe tap, but I have to get the front heel in the ground, then rotate, as we're saying. Linear to rotational movement. So if I do it correctly here, and I'm just going to go boom, okay? Again, I'm going to do it, try to go all the way through. That wasn't as good. Last one. Okay. Better?
Flat, zero approach, so flat swing, and 60 barrel speed.
Right? So you guys can see how you can utilize technology, right, and the analytics and manipulate your movements in order to get yourself better counterbalance, right? I see a lot of people in the back, some players that are trying to do this and that, which is awesome. You got to learn and feel your body in order to accept its shortfalls and its strengths, right? So I did talk about play coverage, okay? We're going to utilize this as the outside, right? This is outside for me. Now everybody is taught to hit this ball right here, deep. You have to. But when it's too low and that pitcher leaves this ball up, we call this the $10 million pitch at the big league level. You know why? Because if you can hit this ball into the stands, you make $10 million, right? So how do we do that? Okay? Now remember, this is a progression. This isn't you're 12, 14, 16, or even in high school and you start doing this, you say, hey, Coach Parque told me to do this, right? You're gonna suck. You have to progress to it, okay? So here's the first thing. I'm gonna just use common sense. So if I don't have any hand move, right, and it's all based upon how energy flows, I can't get to it, all right? No hand move, can't get to it. Bigger hand move, barely. Bigger hand move, barely. Watch out. Okay? I'm disproportionate. Now if I have big hand move and big front hip move, oh, that's barrel. Same pitch, same everything. Big hand move, big front move, barrel. Now watch what happens if I get big hand move, big front move, heel into the ground. Now I pulled the baseball. And that's how they do it at the big league level, right? But can you do that when they're looking 92, slider, changeup, curveball, all those different things? I'm not sure about that. But if we are 2-0, 3-1, 0-0, and we're looking dead red, what are hitters looking for? The ball up, out, over the plate, right? Now, we're not talking about down here. This gets everybody out. I don't care if it's 2-0, 1-2, 0-0. You're probably going to get out 9 out of 10 times if I can hit my spot. It doesn't need to be 95, just 70 miles an hour. This is an impossible ball to hit, virtually, unless I'm going to cheat and go after it, right? So, I'm good right now. So the last portion of this whole talk is going to be kind of one of these things. It's like, okay, cool, you showed me this. I've never moved this way. I don't know how to do it. Or I'm not sure. My coach maybe doesn't know how to identify it. That's why we came up with the VeloPro. Okay, our VeloPro harness is a very simple contraption, as some people call it. It's been in the game for 2 years now. We got 22 MLB teams. We got some of the biggest names in the game using it. It's a phenomenal training tool because you can use it at home. And it's a self-trainer. Some people say it's the greatest assistant coach ever, right? I don't know, but that's what we've heard, okay? What it does is it basically sequences you, and if you become unsequenced or unbalanced in any which way or disproportionate, it will give you feedback, meaning if I get top heavy, if I blow open too early, if I'm disproportionate in any moves, it'll pull your back foot off the ground, right? And I know some of y'all have used it that are in our audience right now, and there's a ton of y'all that have it on our virtual side. But for all y'all that haven't, you can see, okay? Now watch what happens when I go to balance here. So I put it on, this is balance. This right here is what I essentially want to do. I want to throw 90, I want to hit bombs, I need to be on this side at the end of the time. It shifted my weight over to where it needs to be. Now watch what happens when I lean. It pulls my back foot up, right? So it's very simplistic in what you're trying to accomplish. If I rotate, you can see my back heel coming up. So if you want to see this right here, if I prematurely rotate, like I go heel and then rotate, you can see it's pulling it up, like I have to resist. If I get top heavy, it's already pulling my back foot up, right? If I get the the blowout, right? It's pulling the back foot up. So essentially the game of the harness is to keep your back heel down in the ground as long as possible. And that's why you see, when you look at high-level hitters, are they squishing the bug? They are, right? What are they doing? They're here. They're here. That back heel is into the ground until the barrel starts to move, and then they rotate on it, right? And so that's what we want to accomplish. Boom. If I stay over my backside and rotate, I won't feel these bungees. They stay planted, right? So it's a great addition to what you're trying to accomplish as a hitter. Same thing as a pitcher because lower half movements are identical in hitting and pitching, so I don't really need to explain that one, right? How am I doing on time?
15 minutes.
Cool. So I'm going to open it up to questions, comments, concerns, and maybe we can go from there. Are there any questions about
Okay, stream.
things?
If you have any questions right now, stream, now is the time to ask. We've got former big league pitcher Jim Parque up.
All right. Usually there aren't. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you all time coming out, and for you all that tuned in, we really appreciate you too. Thank you very much.